This is going to be more talking than there is text. I'm going to like do this talk and then look at the recording as Pete's done and actually like recycle it again in a couple of months to hopefully give a better talk. Make sure I have some of the, and best part is I can actually have notes over here that you can't see. I'll keep wanting to say something else. And that's okay. Oops. Let me not do that. Which window? Up there.
Something you never want to see at the bomb.
What?
You don't want to hear bomb technicians say that.
Oh, okay. Did someone go to the bathroom?
Pete.
Is it started recording yet?
Yes.
So, we are waiting for the videographer to go to the bathroom, which is a very exciting thing. The good news is I've actually learned how to edit videos, so I will be able to edit this out of here, although I have not uploaded the edited versions of Pete's videos yet.
Or we could auto-tune it.
I don't have auto-tuning programs, but Kdenlive lets me edit the videos. And we should actually, after a bit, maybe we'll be able to talk about Kdenlive, because it's quite cool.
Yeah, it is.
I'd rather just put have keyboard sounds over you talking. It'd be kind of fun.
Yeah? Well, auto-tune keyboard sounds, you can make it more musical. So I need to not stand in front of this too much. I guess it's mostly going to be recording the screen, but I could actually record the slides, such as they are, and the audio, but this will be good. Because I've been doing that as well. So do I want to wait for Pete to get back? Because this is kind of for his benefit. So I'll get some background. I'm a member of the group. I'll try looking at the camera as well. This is weird because there's the light shining at me and I'm this backlight. And it's probably like faced at my forehead. But a member of our group, the person who makes these videos, Pete Tyson, asked why Arch. And what he meant by that is why Arch Linux? Why do so many people at the meetings? And I'm not actually sure there's that many people. There's a couple. There's myself and Chris is like the one that convinced me to try it. Use Arch Linux, and it kind of boils down to what Arch Linux refers to as its philosophy. And it goes into detail on that on the Arch Linux website, but the root of this is a philosophy that has been behind the scenes in Unix for a long time. Hi Pete, I'm explaining what your question was. So basically the reason, if you ask me why is Arch Linux, the answer is because worse is better, at least for my own personal uses. I wouldn't actually use Arch on a production server.
But Dylan, how can worse be better?
Well, first we have to understand what I mean by worse is better. And luckily I have all of this thought has already been done by a guy named Richard P. Gabriel. Yes, not Peter Gabriel, but Richard P. Gabriel, who came up with worse is better. And the four components of worse is better are simplicity, correctness, consistency, and completeness. The first one of those is simplicity, and it's pretty self-explanatory what simplicity is. Well, theoretically it's simple. It's simple what simplicity is. But what that actually means is that design must be simple, both in implementation and in interface. So the way you use it needs to be simple, and the way it's implemented, it needs to be simple.
Can you give some examples?
I can. This is a shell. It reads single commands, and all those single commands are executable files. You of course know this because this is a Linux user meeting. ls has been ls, it's a file. Arguably the interface I'm using is a little bit more complicated, so we can actually drop down to a very simple early Unix interface of just sh. And if you watch videos of people using old school Unix, they would not know where they were, so they would do that all the time, and that's where we are. So the interface of that is simple, and I could pull up the source code for ls, and the GNU version of ls is kind of complicated, but the underlying system is arguably simpler than something like, do I have a file manager installed? I don't have a graphical file manager installed, but if I did, that would be an example of something more complicated. So in Unix land, we have ls, and we have pwd, and we have cp, and we have mv, and those all do different things, but this isn't the lesson on the shell.
So what you're saying is that this shell, which implements an interface where you simply type in the name of an executable, is more simple.
Yeah,
than
but the
a
simple
graphical
isn't the
file
thing. The
manager.
thing about simple is a goal that everyone strives for. What's the simple and worse is better is that it's more important for the implementation to be simple than the interface. So if you have to have a complicated interface, or simple implementation, you choose a simple implementation. I think a place where this shows up, especially early on, is Git. Because Git actually has if you talk to someone that knows how Git works, I'm not sure if they'll say it's simple, but it is simple. We'll go with that. So Git is simple as far as its implementation is concerned. But using Git is something that could like fill at least 3 talks if we wanted to actually cover it in depth.
And pull your hair out.
So simplicity, in the worse is better principle, in the worse is better philosophy, simplicity is the most important consideration in your design. Correctness. Correctness is, once again, a fairly obvious word. The design he designed must be correct in all observable aspects.
I wonder if that's intentional, an intentional typo.
No,
or
it's
a page about correctness.
No, although it is amusing. It is slightly better to be simple than correct. So here's a good example. If you have 2 choices on this, and this is all about software. I'm not talking about anything other than software right now. So if you have a choice between simplicity and correctness, what ends up winning out is simplicity. I think that every programmer ends up making this choice because that's why all software basically sucks in some way, because almost everything sacrifices simplicity for correctness, at least in the stuff I use. I guess you don't see this in the math communities. I mean, Haskell, the Haskell programming language, and Lisps and things like that tend to favor correctness over simplicity.
So would an example of that be the tar command, which in some implementations includes a -y option, and the -z option. The z option compresses a file using gzip, but
is that an incorrect solution? I don't think that's.
The y option compresses a file using bgzip too.
No, that's J. It's J for bgzip too.
J.
Yeah.
Which
I wouldn't argue that's simple, but I wouldn't argue that it's not a correct solution. I guess what you're saying is it's more correctly to pipe the commands around. So yeah, I guess that's an example.
Well, actually, I'm saying it would be more. Would it be more correct to use?
But anyway, you're going to see this everywhere in a Unix
instead of
system.
J?
The fundamental thing about worse is better is that this influences this is a backwards projecting philosophy on the way Unix and C work, and it comes from the perspective of someone trying to figure out why Unix and C work when other systems that are arguably better failed.
Like those two?
I don't know if that's arguably better. I think it's like Multics. Multics failed. Lisp machines failed. In fact, this was written by a guy that's relatively well known in the Lisp community, I believe. So, the design must not be overly inconsistent. What's an example of an inconsistent user interface?
Windows.
Good. And how is Windows inconsistent? I actually have an example of this because I actually had the displeasure of using it the other day. Color management. Trying to get that. You right-click on the desktop and you get screen resolution, and then you choose properties, and then you choose advanced, and then you choose color management, and then you choose color management again. And then instead of clicking apply this color profile, you say set as default. Even if it's the one that's already set as default, it will apply that color management profile. That is inconsistent. There is nothing consistent about that.
How is that inconsistent?
Because it doesn't work like applying any other type of driver or similar hardware profile. Nothing else works like that. Consistency can be sacrificed for simplicity in some cases. There are lots of examples of this in Unix. I don't know if this is the original reason for it, but find, for instance, parses arguments in a completely different way than every other program on the system. So does DD, in fact.
Implementations of regular expressions.
Implementations of regular expressions. But it's better to drop those parts of the design that deal. These are actually supposed to be in my notes column, but they're in here as well. So this is basically what we just talked about, is going back. And so you can sacrifice simplicity for you can sacrifice consistency for simplicity. When this ends up with less common ways of doing things are going to be more difficult than consistent ways of doing things. Regular expressions come up like this. The Perl language, which is a cornerstone of Unix at this point, PHP goes to an extreme. PHP sacrifices all of these. I mean, it sacrifices all of these for something. I'm not sure what it's sacrificing them for.
Ease of adoption.
Ubiquity. It sacrifices everything for ubiquity. I think it has ubiquity through an accident, though. Completeness. It's kind of confusing, actually, when talking about software design, completeness and correctness, because sometimes they can be conflated. To be, oftentimes I think of correctness as being completeness in the sense that for all possible input, it produces some output, even if that output's an error message, an exception. The design must cover important situations as is practiced.
Practical.
So this means, I found a program the other day, a set of programs called CSV Fix, which at first point looked to be really good because it was about 100 commands, not really 100, for dealing with CSV files on the command line. And the problem they violated most of these things. Because one thing, it was one command with a bunch of subcommands, and they were all doing different things to CSV files. So that's, it's not just doing one thing, so I'd say it's not simple. All of the commands had slightly different argument parsing, even though they were all subcommands of the top one. They're also, what ended up being the nail in the coffin, skipping through correctness, because I'm pretty sure they were correctly parsing CSV files. The completeness of this software was such that I couldn't use it for the task that I had, which is I needed to generate a series of differences between two sets of CSV files. Don't ask. And I ended up trying to pipe its output and do what I wanted with it, but it ended up being more work, and I just ended up rewriting my own CSV diff tool. So completeness means that you need to cover as much of the design as possible and be able to not have edge cases like providing a diff command that does nothing. So all reasonably expected cases should be covered. Completeness can be sacrificed in favor of any other quality. So if completing, I don't know how this would come up. I can't think of a case where it would come up, where you sacrifice completeness for correctness. Like, I just don't see that coming up. I don't see sacrificing completeness for simplicity. Well, okay, for simplicity, yes. You can sacrifice completeness for simplicity. In fact, they're almost at opposite ends of the spectrum. But for the two middle ones, for consistency and correctness, I don't see it.
Now, how does security fall into this?
It doesn't. Security by definition ends up it needs to be better is better, which is the antithesis of this philosophy. Worse is better encryption is no encryption that you want to use. Apparently, consistency can be a sacrifice to achieve completeness. If simplicity is retained, especially worthless is consistency of interface. So the other school of this that Richard Gabriel talks about is the MIT approach, which this is going to be a wall of text when it shows up there. But basically, the MIT approach turns the requirements of this list on its head. They value the same four principles, but their relative dependence on each other is different. The MIT approach is witnessed in systems that are generally not in use today, at least not very widely. Lisp is an example of better is better, or the MIT approach. It came from MIT. Other operating systems that Unix has defeated are examples of this. It's highly likely, in fact, it's actually probably quite true that the current BlackBerry 10 OS, which is based on QNX, is the best possible operating system for a mobile device. It's a microkernel architecture. It's written in C. It's been around for decades. It has a lot of oomph behind it, and it's probably going to fail.
That's just because they're stubborn.
It's because it's BlackBerry.
It's because it's probably the better solution. But anyway, let's go over what the MIT approach of this, which is simplicity, and then there's a whole lot of text. But you don't have to read it because I'm going to try to summarize and figure out what the other slides would naturally come after this. So as I said, you kind of turn this on its head. You value simplicity both. You want simplicity in the implementation and in the interface. You don't want to sacrifice correctness. You have to have it all. The previous list is a list of trade-offs that you make. This is a list of things that you're not making trade-offs. You're standing your ground. this, if you're applying this to a project and you're a project manager, you're probably thinking this project is never going to get done. Your design must be consistent, is allowed to be slightly less simple, and see, and this is the wording of it is, you get some wiggle room, but, and everything needs to be perfect. It's kind of like the three parallels in a project. On time, over budget, and very few errors. On time, on budget, very few errors. Which one of those do you want? There's other variations of that. So, this says the end at the bottom. It's supposed to actually go to a blank screen. Oh well. So, other discussion now breaks off into systems, how this applies. So, this is not just for one system, the whole meta system of Unix. It's for individual components. Obviously, Unix is one because worse is better, or possibly other reasons that are encountered, but this actually applies to software that exists within Unix. How this applies to packages, to distributions and the way they package things, and how this affects Arch Linux, and Pete's question about why I use Arch Linux, is that it's worse is better. The package management system is really stupid. It's really, I won't say it's really poorly engineered. It's not poorly engineered, but it's not engineered very to precision. It's not very error checking. There's not a lot of...
So it's not complete?
It's not complete. It lacks completeness. It lacks consistency.
Correctness?
It lacks correctness, but it sacrifices everything for simplicity. But that's to say, it doesn't sacrifice everything enough where it's completely horrible to use. It's actually very nice to use because of all of these things. You can use it more efficiently.
So they sacrifice...
When I say efficiently, it's more efficient as far as your time, provided the constraints are that you want to use the latest stuff. Whereas Debian is a worse or better system. It's especially in the package manager. Packages have an elaborate series of dependencies. It's not simply I require this, but it's I conflict with this. But there's alternatives. If you're using aptitude, it can actually resolve almost any error case that you can get into by package A requires package B, but package C wants this version of package A. You can have an entire, I would draw on the board if I could use the pens properly. You can have an entire elaborate directed graph, and it will figure out the best way of solving the problem, if there is one. So. The answer to this is if you're engineering and you want to have a good product, you probably will do a little bit of both. Worse is better, and better is better. Obviously, your back-end stuff should probably be better is better, and if you screw things up in the front end...
So better and better is worse?
Yes. A combination is probably best. So Pete, I hope I explained that to you. The reason I use Arch Linux is it's really simple. And what I mean it's really simple is it makes me... It's not to say that Debian and Ubuntu aren't really simple, especially Ubuntu. Ubuntu is sacrificing for a different kind of user. It's sacrificing things to be easier for someone that doesn't really care about the inner workings to work on it, which is really great. But the side effect of that is you get stuck with whatever they feel like packaging. And if you want to go and make packages, you can, but because it's a more complete system, it requires more effort. So I want to constantly install random stuff that I just heard about yesterday, and Arch Linux lets me do that.
So would it be accurate to say that Ubuntu is more beastly in size? More packages are necessary?
No, there's probably an equivalent number of packages. The numbers might be slightly different. I don't have a Debian system to see here, but I have 1,438 packages installed. Just the other day, someone told me about AG, which is a grep replacement, a really fast grep replacement. Like really, really fast, and it's coloring and all sorts of stuff. And it's actually called the Silver Surfer, or Silver Searcher. And so I was like, I wonder if this is already packaged. Keep in mind, this is fairly new. I'd only heard about people talking about this relatively recently. I'm not sure how new it actually is, but it's already packaged in Arch.
0.14?
Yeah, okay, this is a good example.
Pac-Man.
And Pac-Man's package manager.
Oh.
So.
Oh, I always thought it was.
Yeah, he's a package manager. He builds
I'm
packages
actually
and
curious,
packages.
but I'll look at that later. Anyway, so I hope that's basically been my presentation for Pete.
Oh boy. Thank you.
Which is good because he's really recording it, so.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Good.
By the way, how I did that screen duplication was actually kind of cool. I had two desktops, and I'm running a team-up session on that screen.